What's up, guys? Welcome to the Financial Dad Podcast. I appreciate you joining us. Last episode, we went over a few things about everything. Over the next year, you're going to see a ton of people enter the market for buying a home. And buying a home is you hear it everywhere, is it's a person's biggest financial purchase or debt or their obligation. So I get a ton of questions from my clients about, hey, I'm looking at buying a house, but what I feel and what people are being told is totally different. So I kind of want to visit that for a minute. What we're going to talk about today is, number one, how to figure out how much house you can comfortably afford. Number two is how the lender looks at you. And number three, how to just calculate it on your own before you ever even meet with the lender. So I want to start out with this. I know a lot of great lenders. I know a lot of bad ones. They could say the same thing about people in my industry. And so, but it is a lender's job to maximize the amount of money that your finances will allow you to use to purchase a home. And so that's why you have to be really steadfast whenever it's time for you to buy a home. You have to go in there kind of semi-educated on what you're looking for, so you're just not getting hammered. And I'll say this, I think the number one reason that people are feeling such a financial strain right now, especially over let's say the last 3 or 4 years when prices were high on homes, and then as well as interest rates are high, is because people are not really doing the math before they go to buy a home, and they're letting the lender dictate how much money can be spent. And people get super enthusiastic and optimistic and just kind of lose all when it comes to that. They key in on what the lender tells them, and then they buy the house and they're like, oh shit, this is way more expensive than what I thought. And so I've always told people this, and then I'll get into the meat of this. I get a lot of questions about buying and renting. Paying a house payment is the easiest part. If I could coin this phrase, paying a house payment is the easiest thing about home ownership. It's the easiest thing. Renting, whenever it comes to renting, you're obligated for a rental payment. You're not obligated for upkeep. You're not obligated for insurance, taxes. You're not obligated for anything except keeping the place clean, neat, and whatever is in your lease agreement. That's it. That's all you're obligated for. Whenever it comes to home ownership, what is not being told to people are all the variables that it is not the lender's job to tell you that you're going to have to replace a $20,000 roof in the next 5 years. That's not his job. But that's another day. So let's get into this. The key to being financially prepared is to know, and we talked about the 48% number. The 48% number is super simple. Let's just say, and I use an example here of, let's just say it's just a husband and wife or a couple, whatever. You take your W-2 incomes. So you just take your annual income, just put the tax statement that you got the prior year, and you multiply that. It's either one person or two people. And so as my example, I said that you have a couple making combined a salary of $120,000 a year between the two of them. W-2, two 30-year-olds, 25-year-olds, whatever, just regular Joe Blow and his wife. And so they're making $120,000 a year. And all you do is you simply take 48% of that and you divide by 12. That's it. The reason why it's 48% is because that's what the banks will allow you to pay towards revolving debts. So revolving debts are what? Anything that shows up on your credit card or your credit statement as a debt. So it could be cars, it could be credit cards, it could be school loans, it could be something that you owe the hospital, something as simple as that. And everything is going to have a minimum payment, and that's what they use. Even if you owe nothing on a credit card, they will assign a $25 minimum payment to it. So all of that has to be taken into account. And so once you do all that, and again, the other thing I always forget, that just blows my mind, is that lenders base your ability to buy a home on your gross pay. Gross pay. So what is gross? Gross is the total amount that you got paid. That does not take out taxes. It doesn't take out insurance. It doesn't take out deferred comp. It doesn't take out anything. They're just looking at your gross pay. And so when they do that, to me, it's kind of it's not a very fair thing to do to a buyer to say, well, we're going to use 48% of their income for revolving debts, believing that they can pay the rest of their bills with 52% of their pay, when really their gross has nothing to do with what they take home. I guess that was my point. Your gross pay has nothing to do with how much money you actually bring home. And we could talk about that a different day, but as an example, I kind of wanted to go into that. There are items that you may be making payments on or have other financial responsibilities that don't show up on your credit. Let's just say you owe somebody some money. And so all of that is not going to show up on your credit report. And so, this is why this part of the podcast, because I've dealt with this for many years, many times, 100 times, that I've probably bought 100 houses, rental properties, homes in the last 20 years. And this is for everybody. This is how it works. And the one thing I say is that, some dumbass a long time ago that worked with the banking system said that we look at 48% and we are going to leave you with 52% to pay for everything else that is not a revolving debt. And so if you really sat down and you put pen to paper and you said, hey, what am I spending money on? And you took out what is a revolving debt, and then you moved everything over that's not a revolving debt, electricity, car insurance, medical bills. Add all of that together. I guarantee you, groceries, clothes, vacations, if you have savings, if you're putting money into a Roth, all of that is going to have to come out of that 52%. And so that's where you have to be super, super careful about making sure that you put pen to paper, because this is what I'm going to say next is exactly what's going to happen where people mess up by not knowing the math before they meet with the lender. It's like everybody else is kind of doing it thing. And so the next people get married, or they're going to get married, oh, well, they want a house. They want to settle down. And so, and they're tired of renting. Maybe both of them were renting or whatever. And so they go to buy a house, and instead of doing the math, they go to the lender. The very first thing that the lender is going to ask for is your Social Security number, and then he's going to know how much money you make. Now, if you've got some side job making $500 a week or $1,000 a month extra, that doesn't count. It only matters what shows up on your W-2s. That's it. That's all that matters. And so the lender inputs his numbers, looks at your credit score, and he comes up and says, hey, based off of $120,000 between the two of you guys qualify for a $400,000 in today's world with today's interest rates, a $400,000 to $450,000 in interest rate on the $500,000 of home. You can go buy that amount of home, and then it's the lender's job to make that happen. Now, yeah, there's other variables like how much you can put down, PMI, all that kind of good stuff. But again, it is not the lender's job. The lender's job is to walk you down the path of buying a home, not to tell you that you can't, or to be your therapist and tell you, hey, you need to go put pen to paper and figure this out before and see where you want to be. So the question was last week after one of the episodes is how much of their income should be used to purchase a house? And I think that's differing for everybody. You see people out there with the 48% always comes up, and then you hear people 25%. You see that there's no percentage, there's no magic number. It's based on the variables at that point in time in your life. It's a snapshot of that day or that past 6 months. What you're going to do in the future has nothing to do with your ability to buy that house in the future. It's all about right then. And so, again, I want to go back to this couple and just say, just very simply, this is just a breakdown of simple math. Let's just take a couple of kids, a couple with no kids, 30 years old, they want a house. Let's say between the two of them, they show on their W-2s that they're making $150,000 a year between the two of them. 150 times 0.48 divided by 12. That gives you an amount that they can use on revolving debts of $6,000 a month. $6,000. That's $72,000 a year of the 150. So let's go average in today's world of $1,200 in total car debts, $500 in school loans, $350 minimum payment between all credit cards. And again, these numbers are super low, but I had to give some sort of number. So that leaves $3,950 for what can be spent on a mortgage. That is the number that the lender is going to tell you. This is where people just get crazy. So the lender tells you that you can buy between a $400,000 and a $500,000 house. And the reason why there's such a variance there is because it leaves $3,950, but there could be PMI, there could be flood, there could whatever the insurance cost is, and whatever the taxes are. So I just went kind of low and said $400 to $450. It is the lender's job to get you qualified for that loan, not to hold your hand and convince you that you need to go buy a $250,000 house. And I promise you this, when I was told that I could buy this amount of house, what was the house price that we were looking for? That price. Nobody's going to say, oh, well, the lender said that we could afford a $450,000 house, but let's go look for a $250,000 house. That it takes a strong will to be able to say, hey, we're not going to do that. We're not going to max out this 48%, and then what if something happens in the future? But anyway, so to rehash, you have to know your 48% number. If buying a house is on your radar, you need to make sure that you don't add any more revolving debts. So this is the number one thing that you see happen with a lot of people when they go to close on a loan. So they find the home. They go and in that 90-day period, they didn't listen to the lender. Hey, don't go buy anything. Don't go max out credit cards. Don't go buy furniture. Don't go do this. And what happens is they then go buy something, and that changes their 48%. That's what's called a debt to income ratio, that 48%. How much debt you have is a ratio compared to how much money you make, which is the 48%. And so a lot of people just kind of, then it could mess them up. They could be out of that house. They have to pay off something. So I know it's a little side note, but just be careful about that. Your total job while you are in house hunting mode is to pay down your debts, pay them on time, and keep your credit score as near or better, or making it better than where it was when you originally went to go talk to the lender. So to kind of rehash this a little bit, know your 48% number. In the future, I can make a simple cheat sheet on the 48% to kind of give you an idea and of where I believe, and what I believe doesn't matter. These are straight facts. This is math. This is not an opinion that I have. This is you and your partner sitting down and coming up with this number. Hey, this is what we can afford, and if that house ain't out there, we're going to wait. And that's how disciplined you have to be in regards to that. And I will say this again, I said it earlier, paying a house payment is the cheapest thing that a person can do. It's the upkeep. When my wife and I bought our house in 2017, I was amazed at because we live a little ways from town. So then you have not just the house payment, that's easy, but then you have lights, you have filters, you have cutting the grass, you have cleaning the pool, you have landscaping twice a year, you have pine straw, you have all of these things that cost money. And then not even to mention, what if you buy an older home and now you have issues with older home issues. And then, the guy that's recording this video, he's got a condo. So he's got association dues. All these things play into it. What if he got hit with an assessment? What if instead of buying that condo that he knew that they could afford, they went and they bought a $400,000 condo where the association dues were double just because the interest rates were lower at the time. So you always have to be You have to know exactly where you are and stay steadfast in that. You have to also be reasonable about your future. Look at the rest of your expenses and understand that the bank is thinking you can pay the rest of your life's carrying costs with that 52%. I don't know what dumbass sat in a room and said that's all that we're going to allow you. You can, and I said this earlier, you can pay for everything else with 52% of what you make. And I just think that that's just unreasonable, because as we've seen recently with inflationary costs, those things that have been 52% have gone up by 30%. So you go max out this home buying that the lender told you that you could borrow instead of doing the math, and you have 52% to pay for everything else. Then gas goes up, bread goes up, groceries go up, gas goes up, everything goes up, and then you're sitting over there with a home and revolving debt that you maxed out. What if you need a new car? All of these things play into it that you have to be smart about. And so, in another example, think about these things. People get married. A lot of people that have more obligations that again are paid in that 52%. Kids, parents, dogs, hobbies, daycare, want to go back to school, all of these things. And I just think that it's not fair to people whenever that's only 52% of their income. I know people that spend 80% of their income on that. And so, especially if you're middle America and you have a great job, but you're not sitting out there and you don't have the ability to go make $150,000 a year and then make $250,000. You're just on a sliding scale that just goes up by 3 to 5, 6%, which is perfect. I mean, there's a ton of people out there. There's blue collar workers and white collar now that are doing just that. So you have to be reasonable about what your expectations are, as well as be reasonable about what might happen in the future. Because once you sign that dotted line, especially in today's market where people maxed out their buying power in purchasing a home, it would be really difficult for you to sell your home like right now, because then the question is where do you go? So that's a question. So guys, the biggest thing that I can take away or tell you to do is always crunch your own numbers. If you need some help with that, then there are plenty of people that are not lender related that will talk to you, because a lender is going to talk to you about what you can borrow. You need to make sure that you know the math on everything else that's going on in your life and take a snapshot of that day. And if you're really smart, you'll be able to kind of take a snapshot of the rest of the next 5 years. You just don't want to put yourself in a position, home ownership wise, that you can't do anything else. You're tied down to a house and you're not able to enjoy your life. And that's the whole point of this podcast, is to teach people about freedom and peace. I mean, and it takes work and it takes effort and it takes you doing your own math. Don't let somebody else do it unless they're helping you. But I appreciate you guys tuning in today, and I look forward to the next podcast. If you have any questions, you can email financialdadpodcast@gmail.com, and have a good day.